Go.
All right.
Hey guys, welcome to Winning US Open. I'm your host, Ramon Osa, and I've got a super special guest with me today, Ken DeHart, who we'd be here for about 10 years, listing all of his accolades, but he's a master professional with the PTR, international master professional, PTR Hall of Fame, USPTA master professional, USA high performance coach. So the guy knows a thing or two, and we're super excited today, Ken, because we get to be in the presence of you, who've been around the block. And today, Ken, we'd like to talk about about your discussion that we had on the Winning Summit, which is around the monsters in the mind. You know, tennis players are notoriously intelligent, and sometimes that wreaks havoc in a match, in a tight moment in a match. Maybe you can just give us an introduction of what that talk was about, and we can sort of jump off from there.
Sure. A little bit of it was, you remember the movie Forrest Gump? Okay. If your IQ is above 85, you have a problem playing sports. Because what happens is your mind wanders too many. Forrest could only think of one thing at a time. And that one thing, what he would do, there was no other thought except that one thing. Whether it was Forrest, don't ever take your eye off the ball. He became ping pong champion of the world. So it's kind of like that. It's that simple and it's that difficult. The challenge always is, how do you not have thoughts? How do you have that moment of when you're doing something where it's automatic? And a lot of my background comes from Dr. Jim Lair, the sports psychologist. He's worked with all the great players. He worked with Sabatini when she finally won the U.S. Open after a time. He worked with Dan Jensen, who finally won a gold medal after failing 4 times. He works with the Special Forces, with the FBI, the Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, the Blue Angels. How do you fly 600 miles an hour with a wing 3 feet off the other person's wing? And it goes back to having no thought. But that means you've trained yourself to the point that what you're doing is automatic. It doesn't require a thought to make it happen. And that's a challenge for all of us as athletes, because we're usually emotional athletes as well. And we're always caught up in the emotion of, I could be winning a Grand Slam. I could be winning US Open. I could be winning the local club championship. And that thought intercepts the mind, it interrupts it. And so the monsters in your mind are those things that talk to you while you're playing. And the challenge is how to keep the monsters quiet.
They call it the default mode network in neuroscience. And what you said was so important. You said you have to get to a point of mastery over the technical and the physical elements of the stroke. And I'd just like for you to elaborate on that a little bit more, because I think Nadal said it's a miracle that a ball can fly across the net with all the different spins and speeds and heights, and that we can hit the ball cleanly and then have to do that several hundred times in a match. So what does that process look like for you? I know you're still in the trenches training adults and kids every day. What are some practical ways that we can move towards mastery?
Belief. Number one is belief. Belief that you can get there. That's the most important part. When we warm up, my specialty is teaching large groups, and typically we'll have 12 to 15 players on one or two courts. And I have about 5 classes like that, and it's all drop-in. So the skill level is 3.0 to 5.0 skill level. And the warm-up involves them bouncing the ball in their racket, dribbling it down, and then looking at me and trying to dribble the ball. Immediately, even if they can do a couple, there's a fear factor involved, like, I can't find the ball. So we challenge them. The number one is when you had the focus of only doing one thing and it was there, you could do that with no problem. You could do that till Tuesday, no problem. But the moment you had to look up and try to do that skill, doubt entered your mind. The monster was already there. So that's the warm-up. Then we have them bounce the ball on the edge of the racket. And then, no problem. Okay, I'll bounce it down on the edge of the racket twice, then bounce it up on the edge once. And they're usually amazed how well they can control their eyes. The eyes are the key to the mind. When the eyes are still, it's because the mind is quiet. If the mind has a thought, the eye tries to follow the thought, whatever that happens to be. So we've always tried to work on how do you manage your eyes, because that that's how you're able to quiet the mind when you play. And then as the warm-up goes, we start off, okay, after they make this, I give them a target, because everything in sports starts off with a target. And we have a thing called a magic window. It's a 6-foot tall PVC window. And so that they can see when they're hitting. Most of the time on the court, the reason it's hard to play, there's a big blue court. And so where do I hit it? So you have to have something that you show yourself you can actually aim the shot, first of all. So we have them hit for the magic window and rotate out. And what they do after they make the shot, they tell me yes or no. Yes, I saw the ball spin. No, I didn't. And the warm-up is them warming up their eyes, knowing there's a target, but then not looking at the target, looking where the ball was going to be met. So in the warm-up is when the ball's the slowest. And that's your best time that you're going to probably see the ball in the whole match. So if you don't focus in the warm-up on how your eye tracks the ball, it's probably not going to happen when you play.
Well, and one of the things that Lenny really based everything that he's done through Billie Jean King's study that you were a part of was understanding that the loss of balance that recreational players have is directly related to, as you were saying, is the eye and the head shifting through the contact point. So I love that about, in the warm-up, really paying extra attention to seeing that ball contact the strings or have your eyes steady, to your point, so the mind is steady. So it sounds like now that you've got the ability to visualize powerfully whether they're hitting the magic window or they're hitting a target. And a quick anecdote, I was out with my daughter yesterday who finally decided she really wanted to get serious about tennis. And I'd been planting this seed for years. And as soon as we put a target out there, and it was a very small target, it was amazing how everything just started to quiet down. And she was lasering into that target. Whereas before we were focusing on the feeling and just having a good time. The ball was kind of going everywhere. So that part about the target is massive. Now, when we get to the professional players, and we're talking about the best of the best, the Djokovic's and Alcaraz's and Federer and Nadal, are they thinking about targets when they're in these match points, or is this sort of an unconscious process? What do you think's going through their mind in these moments?
They've game planned before the matches ever started. They game planned. We're going to play a 3-1. Here's a pattern. When you look at a tennis court, there's four, we'll call them squares, 4 squares on the court. Okay, there's a deuce service court, space behind the deuce service court, the ad court is space court. So I never played tennis till I was in college. I was a basketball player and baseball player. And one day I went to Kmart, bought a racket, started playing. But it was pretty simple because the footwork from basketball helped me get in position to hit. My eye tracking skills from baseball made it fairly simple. And to me, I didn't play against my opponent. There were 4 squares on the court that I played against. And so the first was 1, 2, 3, and 4. To me, it was like baseball. There's 4 bases. Pick which one you're going to throw to. So a pattern might be, Ken, I want you to play this guy. I want you to run a 3-1-3 pattern on him. So deep to 3, which would be his backhand. He's a right-hander. When you get a chance, hit short to 1. If he moves in, then go back to 3 again. Or the pattern might be, just run a 2-3 pattern. Just keep going, forehand, backhand, forehand, backhand. So I learned to play like in golf. You play the golf course, you don't play your opponent. So in tennis, I always played the court, not the opponent. So I kept the emotions out of the game, but it kept me targeted. Because otherwise, I'm like, where do I hit it? Where is he? My thoughts would try to get in there. As long as I can have the target, and every sport's based on targets. A golfer sees the hole, looks at the ball. My son wanted to play golf. I hadn't played golf in 10 years. My son, let's go out and play golf. I said, okay. So I would turn the logo of the ball in to face the club head. And then when I would swing, I would keep my eye on the logo. And I didn't lose any balls. I did shoot about 112 for 18 holes, I was satisfied. But I didn't try to overdrive the ball. I wasn't thinking I need to outdrive Cameron. I wasn't worried about missing. I was just focused on the logo on the ball.
So I love that.
That was my target.
I think that's such a huge nugget of wisdom that you just dropped, because I think we all get swept away in emotions on the court. And it can you can easily fall victim to, oh, that guy is just a pusher, or this person, shouldn't even be on the same court as me, and all these thoughts that creep into our head, the monsters of the mind.
Right.
And by keeping our attention on the things that we can actually control, which is where you're hitting the ball, is such a powerful concept. What do you do with someone, Ken, if you have someone who is so emotional? Maybe they just got off of a really tough match. How do you sort of help people navigate that? Because as much as we want to say it, we don't play in a vacuum, and we are human beings. What are some practical ways that you help people process the emotional side?
Well, there's three parts of the game. There's before the game, during the game, and after the game. And so one of my topics is, here's 6 steps to think about to prepare you for the match, 6 things to try during the match, and 6 things to review at the end of the match. And so typically you would ask my son, for example, Cameron, he just lost a match. I said, okay, Cameron, what did you do best today? Nothing. I played terrible. The guy sucked. I said, what was his best? Everything. The guy played amazing. So the first thing Wayne Bryan always told you is, do not talk to anybody for 20 minutes after the match. They need time to come down emotionally before you start trying to do things. Wayne Bryan was that after the match, you say, where do you guys want to go eat? So very similar. Like, I'd be playing, like maybe in the semifinals of the tournament, I lose. Cameron right away would come out on the court with me and would hit balls for a few minutes. Then I would go off the court because he knew I needed to come down. Because you come off the court and you might say, okay, you played so well, and I can't believe how good you are. And you're thinking like, crap, man, I suck. I'm just lost. So it takes a minute for the human emotion to kind of come down, which is amazing when you watch Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, the guys from the past play a 4-hour match. They come off and the guy sticks a microphone in their nose and says, what do you think about playing Djokovic tomorrow? Dude, I just played 4 hours. How do they not just slap the guy silly?
Yeah.
But they've managed that part of it too. So writing down, what did you do best? What did they do best? If you could go back and change the match right now, what would you change? Those are the things that we look at. But that after a period of rest, mind's got to have a time to come down.
They talk about the emotional refractory period, and the game is, in tennis, you've got 25 seconds to go into the next point. And the person who can manage the emotional trauma or elation, because they're both sort of imposters,
Definitely.
are the people that are going to be the most even keel. So when you get to the 25 seconds, do you talk about rituals? I'm assuming you do. And if you do, what are the rituals that you help players develop so that they can get to that state?
Dr. Jim Lair was the first one that really came up with this. He did a video called the 16-second cure. The 16 seconds between points, how you manage it. The first, as soon as the point's over, there's some kind of response like, yeah, I got it. Oh, God, I missed it. The next response is to walk back with no thought. Give yourself a mental vacation as you walk back to the baseline or get ready. Before you get to the baseline, you game plan. Okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Once you get to the baseline, there is no thought. You've already pre-planned. If the thought crosses your mind, step away from the baseline. When you can quiet your mind again, go back in again like that again. But Jim was the first one, and I still have a copy of the DVD. It's a VHS tape, not a DVD. And how to manage the 16 seconds. He called it the 16-second cure. He was the first one to really identify it and put it out there as to how to deal with sports. And you see baseball players do it all the time, and basketball player, he walks up to shoot a free throw. There's that time when you can see him reset. And he goes back to all the practice times he's had in the gym. And in that moment, he's back in that moment. He's not in a basketball game. He's not shooting to win the game. He's in that moment from practice.
And so they've anchored a state because they've practiced not just the forehands and the backhands and the serves, but literally that process so much that it has become an sort of like an autonomic, the autonomic nervous system gets a chance to calm down. And this is just such a fascinating conversation because ultimately it comes down to presence,
right?
And being able to be present. And I think especially with today, with technology and all of the things that are thrown at us constantly, what kind of things do you do, or what kind of things do you have your players do, and how do you manage social media and advertisements and all of the things that are clamoring for our attention, and help players, especially young players, kind of find that generous present moment? How do you do that?
A lot of it goes back to showing them how strong their mind is. Uh, when we do a thing when players are learning to serve with a continental grip, the two things that players hate to hear is a continental grip and split step. They hate those two words because they know that's all the coach ever talks about. And so when you have the continental grip, the racket always feels like it's weird in their hand. They're going to miss the ball. So you actually have them start at the net. They toss the ball up and hit it on the edge of the racket. Toss it up, and then if you see the ball spin, you'll actually hit the edge of the racket. Now, this time, toss it up and give the ball a high five. Oh, I see. Now that's why I can turn my hand, because of the grip. And then we have a contest to see if you make the ball over the net on the edge of the racket, you move back 2 steps. And you keep going back and back and back. And we actually play games with the kids, and I'll serve on the edge of my racket into the court like that, because I'm not focused about missing the shot. What if I make it? I just see the ball, and I only need a half inch to hit a ball with. I don't need 100 square inches. If my mind is still, if I'm thinking, okay, don't miss this shot, let's show them how good you are. Any thought about either one of those, and I'll miss. And I say, oh, sorry, I had a thought. And then I'll reset and just see the ball. And then I can hit on the edge of the racket.
I love that, because that just requires that flow state, but it's also in this sort of game, atmosphere, and it just gets them right into that full concentration. So that's fantastic.
If I'm playing a match, I'm having trouble. I'm starting to lose my focus, because it will go away. There's no way you can focus. An hour and a half match, there's only actually 12 minutes of actual play time. That's it. I mean, now you turn a match on, it's better than it all playing, turn the camera on, points over, turn it off, back on. That's why they can review a match after a game, because you didn't play an hour and a half. You played 12 minutes. So it's easy for you to sit down with a coach later at some point and look over 12 minutes of match play. But then getting them to realize how strong their mind is once they can do it. You just have to give them keys. You have to find out, are they auditory, visual, or kinesthetic learners? And whenever you say something, someone says, yeah, I see that. They're visual learners. I know I got a good feel for that now. Nobody ever says, I hear what you say. So here is the cheapest way to teach. It's like, can you use words that help people? Like if I said, I spoke to 600 high school coaches in Texas. I said, how many of you say when your students you guys, come on, get over here. I said, have you ever seen an over here? Why do you think they don't come in? So if you said, everybody on the deuce court service line, that's measurable. Don't hit the ball so hard. As what? Move your feet more. Then what? Keep your eyes still longer. How long? So you need to have things. If you can ask a question at the end of a statement, you didn't tell anybody anything. I told my son, pick up your room. He said, I can't, it's too heavy. But if I'd put your shoes away, hang up your clothes, that's measurable. So when you go through again, making sure that the words you use as a coach or the words you use to yourself are measurable. I love it. As a basketball player, my coach would say, you got to want it. You got to go for it. I'd say,
go for what?
Yeah. And eventually he'd quit yelling. So I figured I must have done it right. If he had said, I need on a scale of 1 to 10, I need your focus level at 8, 9, or 10. Then he put me into a drill where I'm like so intense. He said, okay, now what's your focus level? I said, 9. He said, okay, so when we say focus, you need to be at level 9. When you make a mistake, what happens was your focus level went to what? 5, 6, or 7. So we do a drill where we toss the balls back and forth with the players and get them to move. And we do different games. We do it for time, and they have to beat their score by 2. And then I'll stop everybody and say, okay, what's your focus level? Everybody's at 8, 9, or 10. I said, when you're at 8, 9, and 10, you're competitive. 7, 6, and 5, you're social. You can still hit and still talk and play. And below that, you're going to hurt me or somebody else. So instead of correcting an error when someone makes an error, just ask them, what was your focus level? I was a 6. Okay.
And this gets into instincts, I think. And Lenny is always talking about tapping into these primal instincts that we're all born with. And it seems that the best players in the world and the highest skilled players, whether it's high school or college, are somehow able to trigger these natural athletic instincts that we're all born with. So, Lenny uses the cue of get to your best position as fast as you can, and then, trust your instincts. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, Ken, and what's happening there? Because I think it's genius, and I've seen it with my players, and it really taps into something powerful.
It's called the golden retriever approach. Hold the tennis ball up, and the golden retriever goes, yeah. He doesn't think when he said, get to the ball. So his only thought is get to the ball. So I've talked with Pat before and said, look, Pat, all I want you is get to the ball. That's your only thought, get there. How you get there will tell you when to swing and how to move. But your thought is just get to the ball. Any other thought, like lead with your right foot first. Give yourself 2 feet of space. You're dead.
Right.
So we just call it the golden retriever approach. We have no thought except get to the ball. And but the trick is your eye tells you where to run. It tells you when to swing. So when someone looks awkward when you're hitting, they had a thought. Because when you have the thought, whenever the eye moves, the feet stop. Because they're not sure. I thought we were going there. You're thinking something else. When they decelerate their swing, because their eye moved. So when the eye moves, the racket stops because, like, I thought we were going to hit the ball, and you looked over there. So learning how to use the eyes again.
And these are habitual thought patterns that people have practiced a lot. And we know that the brain is plastic. It can change.
Right.
What kind of things practically can people do if they're chronic overthinkers? Is it as simple as replacing a technical thought or a spacing thought or a swing thought with, I just got to get to it, and just rehearsing that?
There's only 3 movements in a ball sport. You catch it, that's a volley. You toss it, that's a ground stroke. And you throw it. That's only 3 moves there are. Like that. So I said, I want you to toss me a forehand. If I use the word, can you hit a forehand back to me? They're going to swing fast. And that's my fault. I told them to hit it. If I said, can you toss me a forehand? I'll get topspin on the very, very first ball they hit ever. Total beginner. So I'm tossing the ball with your hand. I take your racket and toss me a ball. And they'll hit topspin on the very first ball.
Wow.
And can you catch a ball? That's a volley. Great. That's a good job. Okay, now this is just a giant hand. Can you catch the ball? So in the volley, you're thinking catch. Ground stroke is a toss, and the serve is a throw. That's only 3 skills there are.
It's amazing. So and we're winding down here, Ken. I'd like to talk to you for hours today, but I know the serve is probably the most difficult shot, and it's the most important shot, you could argue. So if you're thinking about a recreational player, say 4-0, 4-5, 3-5, somewhere in that range, we know that the toss is super important. But how do you begin to integrate the serve? And the drill that you gave with the edge of the racket, guys, if you're watching this right now, go try that, because I've done it, and it takes some practice, but it really gets you dialed in. What are some other things, Ken, that people can do that'll help with the serve?
Well, the serve's actually the easiest shot for me to teach. Number one is I'll give the person a ball, and I said, can you toss the ball in my hand? And I'll walk around. They'll throw the ball into my hand every time. So I said, you don't have a toss problem. You have a target problem. So when you watch the pros, wherever I look is where the ball's going to go. That's why it's called eye-hand coordination, not hand-eye. The eye tells the hand what the hand's stupid. It only does. So when they look up, and I said, well, where do I look? I said, hold your racket up as high as you can. Look at the racket. Okay, before you toss, look there. I promise you the ball will go there. So we go outside, we find a tree, and just higher than the racket. I said, now pick out any leaf you want and toss the ball to the leaf. And they're like, oh my God, I can hit a leaf. Yeah, because you set your eyes where you wanted the ball to go. So I said, the serve isn't hard to teach. Tossing the ball in the right spot's the hard part. So I went to a workshop once, and the guy, he spent an hour talking about different ways to toss the ball. Ice cream cone, up the chimney, put it on this. I said, dude, just look where you want the ball to go. It'll go there. You don't have to teach people. They can all toss the ball. They just need a target.
I remember
they're tossing to a target.
I interviewed Roscoe Tanner. I was out in Florida, and great serve, and he did the same thing. He went out with his coach for a week in the woods, brought his racket, and he just went swinging at leaves the entire time.
Yeah, it's amazing how good it is when you have a target again. So then once they can do that, you say, look, when you toss the ball up, okay, If you don't see it spinning, don't swing. You've already looked away. So they look up, they toss the ball, and then if they see the ball spinning, because the eye seeing the ball spinning tells the hand where the ball is. And that's why I can serve from the baseline on the edge of my racket. And out of 10 serves, I can hit 8 serves in the court on the edge of the racket. I look up, see the spin. I only need a half inch to hit the ball with.
See the spin of the toss. Is that right?
When the ball goes up, the ball's going to spin. He said, do I spin? He said, it doesn't matter. I said, if you see the ball has some kind of rotation, that means you're looking at it. So you just told your right hand where the ball is. And the right hand says, I know where to go now.
That's amazing. Ken,
but it's always simple stuff.
This has been such a great conversation. And I want people to understand that, we have an amazing opportunity as tennis players to develop these skills of becoming a clutch player. And what you really shared with us today were some actionable ways that people can go out and begin to quiet their mind, begin to tune in the warm-ups, so that we can really set the mind and set the eyes more accurately that will control the mind. Is there anything you'd like to leave the players with today before we sign off?
Yeah, tennis should be a moving experience. If you're not moving, you're experiencing golf.
That's right. They call it golf because all the other 4-letter words were taken, I've heard.
Exactly. That's right.
Well, thank you guys.
It's great to talk to you today. I look forward to talking to you some more. And I got a lot more fun stuff. Everything we do is real practical, no technical terms, just simple things that people can do every day.
Outstanding. Guys, we're going to be hearing a lot more from Ken in the near future. Ken, thank you again so much for joining us today. And if you guys are watching this on a replay and you have any questions that we didn't get to today, feel free to leave those down in the comments, and we'll be hanging out and answering all your questions. And if you know anybody that could benefit from this information, feel free to share it on whatever platform you're watching on. And thank you again, Ken, for being with us today.